Okay. Professor Chen.
Okay, it's my honor to introduce something about the Chinese dream here. So maybe I can show you a little bit because I made a point. Okay, PPT. Today I will give you 4 parts of it. Let's see. The first is a little of the background, and second is what is Chinese dream. See just a little bit of it. And the thirdly is the rapid growth in China. And also I will take Hangzhou for example because it is my hometown and I'm very familiar with it. And the fourth is the comparison between Hangzhou and Chicago. Just to see a little bit, okay.
We have 5 minutes.
Yeah. So I will try faster, okay. And as Professor Clark said, in the city as an entertainment machine, with the urban growth dynamics, quality of life is not a mere byproduct of production. It defines and drives much of the new process of production. So it is true in China. Nowadays, Chinese government focus more on the improvement of people's life. In 2017, the report of the 19th CPC put forward that socialism with Chinese characteristics has entered a new era. Have you heard that? And the main current contradiction in Chinese society has been transformed into the contradiction between the people's growing needs for a better life and the unbalanced and insufficient development. That is to say, our task changes from material and cultural needs to needs for a better life. Okay. And in fact, early in 2012, Chairman Xi Jinping proposed Chinese dream, which is most important goal for us at this time. I think it is also a political idea. As she said, the Chinese dream is the wealth and stress of the country and the revitalization of the nation, happiness and of the people. It is also a dream of cooperation, development, peace, and a win-win situation. Okay. I have wrote 2 papers about the Chinese dream. Because of time, I don't mention here. Yeah. And the third part, I want to say the rapid growth in China. For last year, the report of the 20th National Congress pointed out that the GDP had grown to 114 trillion yuan. It's a very, a large scale. And the proportion of China's total economy in the world has reached 18.5%, which was the largest, second largest in the world. The urbanization rate reached 64.7%. And the world's largest high-speed railway and highway networks have been built. You can see from the map, it is the full coverage of high-speed roads. If you want to go, from Hangzhou to Beijing, you can choose these high-speed rail roads for about 4 hours. You don't have to take a plane. Yeah. And I will take Hangzhou for example. As Professor Clark mentioned, I have a lecture before I came to Chicago, and the topic is about the future community project in Zhejiang province or in Hangzhou. Takes the C theory into practice. As Professor Clark said, amenities drive urban growth, and it takes street as the unit of piece of the creation of the model, and 5 to 15 minutes of public service circle, for the residents. So it's very convenient for them. By the end of 2039, basically all areas of the future community will be covered. Okay, let's show you some pictures of the future community. Okay, this is the residents' art exhibition, some handwriting or some arts. Okay, and also this is some cultural heritage works of ethnic minorities and creative products. In this community. Also, there is little library in this future community. Residents can join them, especially the younger people or the adults and the children. And also, it offers indoor basketball court. And very convenient. It's have a bus station, and all of them have some, wall painting. You can see from this picture. Very beautiful place. And also they have the small clinic for the residents. If they catch a cold, they can buy some common medicine for daily use. And this is 24-hour administrative service area. I think it's very convenient for residents. They don't need to go far to apply like their ID card or something else. So they can just finish that in their own community. It's very good. And the last one is the comparison between Hangzhou and Chicago. These two cities, just a little bit. I think the common things, they are both tourist-oriented city, like Hangzhou. There has larger tourism, and also Chicago. Yes, is a common thing. And the second, I think common is they all emphasize on the role of the arts. They pay more attention about it. They all have all kinds of their museums, the theme parks, and all kinds of art centers. They have lots of them. And the left is the Lake Michigan. The Chicago has a Michigan. And the right is West Lake in Hangzhou. It's also very beautiful. And maybe some difference, I think, because I have arrived here for more than 2 months, and I think Hangzhou is more digitized than Chicago. That's my experience. Because in Hangzhou, it is said one cell phone is okay, can go everywhere. And there's a true story about foreigners travel. In 2016, there's a G20 Hangzhou Summit event. Okay, and the German boy Afu from Shanghai to Hangzhou. He only with a cell phone and his passport. And to complete the bus, enjoy the food, shopping parks, and other trips, spend a day of cashless mobile payment experience. Yeah, and before leaving, he bought flowers for his wife, and he said, I played in hundreds of cities in more than 30 countries all over the world, and Hangzhou is truly the mobile payment capital of the world. That's what he said. Yeah, this. And I found in Chicago it's not as convenient as Hangzhou, because once I forget to take my credit card and cash, and when I go to supermarket and the cashier said, you shouldn't just take iPhone. You should take some cash with you and credit card. So I think it's totally different. And another thing, the last one I want to mention is Hangzhou has one policy of government effectiveness reform that is called run at most once policy. What's the meaning of it? That means you just to go there once, like in government service, then you can do everything you want just once. Yeah, and now become not run even once. Why? Because we have the online system, online government service system. I can only use my hand to finish most of the stuff here. Yeah, so it's very convenient. And I should compare with Chicago, because yesterday afternoon I went to apply the state ID, and maybe it's my fault. I forget one document, and they asked me to print it and go back. Then I'll go maybe a long distance and go back for half an hour, and they told me I forget another thing. That is 7 times. Yeah. So I haven't finished my application, and maybe the 3rd time I will go there. So comparison, this I think maybe Hangzhou is more digitized. They can use their e-documents online. That's more convenience for us. That's yeah. And the last one, yeah, we all know Chairman Xi now visit U.S. Yeah, in Los Angeles. Yeah, Los Angeles. Yeah, yes, yesterday. And we future, we hope we have more cooperation in the future. That's all. And welcome to China and welcome to Hangzhou. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm trying to give you a little bit of the flavor of the multiple kinds of visitors we've had here from China. We've had about between 90, I'm losing track, between 90 and 100 visitors. And I made a quick comment that when we have a discussion about sensitive issues, what touched this off was what's the role of Marxism, and we compared that within France, within the U.S., in New York, and in China. And I was hoping we could get a little bit of this, but the one theme is Marxism lay under most of the sections of the readings in part 5 of the syllabus, which is called Patterns of Urban Growth and Decline, and that the beginning is really the 1920s Chicago tradition. Burgess, Hoyt, Dudley Duncan, Louis Wirth, and then we have reactions against this to try to update I'll take one example. William Julius Wilson is perhaps the leading African American sociologist. He was here for maybe 20, 30 years. I was almost simultaneously with him. He was in Harvard for a while. And the book here is called The Truly Disadvantaged, the Inner City, the Underclass, and Public Policy. This is an older book. And what is classic, I would say Marxist influenced, not dogmatically in any way, but the idea that production, jobs, union management conflicts in the way, so Marx talked of the capitalists and the proletarians, but this kind of conflict is the source of seen as the truly disadvantage of the underclass, the inner city. This was Bill Wilson's earlier approach. Bill Wilson was then the chairman of the city's advisory group when President Obama was elected. And some of the people who'd worked with him, and Bill Wilson wrote a new book, and he basically said, we now have an African American as president of the United States. This changes things the way that we should and can see ourselves as African Americans within American society. We are not just a beaten down minority, but more specifically, social scientists and policymakers concerned with urban policy should not try only to follow the welfare state, but really what he was strongly had been advocating for a couple of decades. Basically, the conception of the welfare state came largely, if you will, with Bismarck in Prussia in the late 19th century. And the idea was to treat everyone the same and provide equal welfare benefits for people who are middle or low in income or whatever, if you were Bavarian or if you were not Bavarian. Those kinds of regional and other differences were not to be explicit, and the American welfare state had a fair amount of that, at least as an ideal, when it developed first with Roosevelt and then with Lyndon Johnson, Jack Kennedy, and so forth. Bill Wilson worked actively as well with Hillary Clinton. She was I'll leave it at that. The new Bill Wilson was, I've changed. And instead of focusing so much on one kind of policy for everyone, we should be confident enough of us as being treated as a specific subculture, African Americans, and we should focus specifically on diseases and problems, including mental, physical, or others, which are higher or more problematic, including the African American family. And he talked about this, and then he had chapters on these, then he had chapters on crime, on gender problems, etc. Things which had not been discussed for about 20, 30 years following publication of what was called the Moynihan Report. Moynihan had been a state senator from New York and was trying to deal with problems of the disadvantaged to try to give some specific policies that could be added that would assist African Americans. Instead, it blew up in his face in the sense that he discussed these specific differences, including among African Americans and between African Americans and others. And so basically, sociologists who talked about this, including James Coleman, who was probably the most distinguished sociologist at the time, was expelled from the American Sociological Association. Okay, so the urban section gave him an award as making major contributions to urban sociology, but a group within it basically said, we're kicking you out. Okay, so Bill Wilson then reversed himself. Bill Wilson essentially was saying, we should be able to talk about all these things, and we can try to do research, try to help the government in specific ways, because we don't have the necessity only to disguise ourselves as the same as white. And okay, I'll leave it at that. I'm also touching on a couple of the readings, so I'm trying to give you some flavors and things that are here, even if we're not going to go over them in great detail. In terms of the role of Marxism and changes, one which is pretty dramatic is Manuel Castells. Castells is a Spanish, not French, he's Spanish sociologist. He went to France and was very visible and successful within France. And he wrote a book on basically on urban cities, urban policies, and it was heavily, specifically, let's say, Leninist Marxist. That dominated the perspective of many French sociologists, which was consistent, and I've talked to you before briefly about the French Communist Party followed a Leninist line, and that continued until roughly 1989, when the Berlin Wall went down. By contrast, Italy and Spain embraced what they called Eurocommunism, or Eurocommunism or neo-communism, which was to add the environment, social diversity, a range of social issues which have become discussed now as diversity concerns, which you can see very visibly with the Biden administration. We talked about the old New Deal is there, but so is the new Biden sets of policies, which come from the social issues, which we talked about in several readings in the course. When the Spanish party changed its line, Castells started to do that. He tried to work it to where he started to work on social movements, including the most visible, not so, if you will, controversial, was environmentalism. But he got into enough trouble with the French Communist Party and many others who were not just a party or as an organization. Many said this is not Marxist, and you should stay with the proletariat and with classic Leninist kinds of issues. Lenin didn't talk about picking up the garbage. Neither should we. Okay. What did Castells do? He left France. He went to California, and he stayed basically ever since. He went back to Spain occasionally, but not to France. France had retained too much of a dogmatic. So I'm pointing this out, that he then worked with the next reading in the section listed there here for week A is Logan and Molotch. Their book is called Urban Fortunes. It says 1987, which was a second edition. I'll just mention a few others which make the same point from Bill Wilson, Castells. The next name here was Michael Deere. Michael Deere is British. He a geographer. He followed his career at the University of Southern California, and now at Berkeley. He's a leading geographer in Berkeley. And he says that he is following a Frankfurt School of sociology. And what does that mean for him? A combination of Marx plus Freud. Last name I'll just mention briefly to say, Henri Lefebvre, Lefevre, is cited by several Americans, Brits, and others of Lefebvre as focusing on place and place activities, but the terms and the labels are very abstract, very loose, very hard to see what he's actually saying. And what he basically is building up he's not trying to contradict the French Communist Party, as he was writing. He never basically said that he was in conflict with the French Communist Party. He was trying to stay that, but he's trying to keep open. But his solution basically was vagueness and abstraction. Okay. By contrast, I'm mentioning Logan and Molotch's book, Urban Fortunes. When it first came out, it was basically consistent with this Marxist tradition, which came from this last section of the syllabus, and which was drawn from, I will say explicitly, from several of my sociology colleagues who said these should be on the PhD required reading list for PhD at the University of Chicago. I knew many of these folks better than the others who put them on the list, and pointed out a little more of the specifics, including Logan's and Molotch, which is still a widely used book. Both of the two were not Marxist in the late 60s and 70s. They became Marxist in the period when that became very, I will call, faddish. In that period, the time of the 1968 is the simple date that we can link it that way. 1987 is the second edition of their book, and it incorporates no changes in the text of the book, but they added a preface. And if you read the preface, it deeply contradicts what follows. And he includes what he says what they say in the preface is very close to what these other things are doing, such as in the next section altogether on arts and culture, on others, which are building a multi-causal perspective, not a historic materialist interpretation. I think most of the examples which you've heard in the ideal city, which Professor Chen has talked about, is still heavily focused on materialistic. So I asked if we could try to bring in briefly the Engelhard readings and the Engelhard point. Anybody can speak to why I'm mentioning Engelhard here in this context? What are 2 or 3 things you should know about Engelhard? Ronald Engelhard. Okay. Engelhard was trained as a political scientist here. His main advisors were sociologists here at the National Opinion Research Center, and spent most of his career at the University of Michigan. But he's also German, as his name implies. And he spent maybe half of his time working with West European cities, and in the last 10 years, he was also in Moscow, and he was working with the Russians to try to develop surveys for capturing changes in values. Okay, values and how to study values is what he really tried to do carefully, and that's what we did, the 4 of us. I mentioned Engelhard, Elazar, Lipset, myself, and we met quietly because it was a very unpopular thing to study values in a period when the Moynihan Report was considered untouchable. Okay, things changed. The Engelhardt, I'm pointing to in part because it's clear and simple and specific, and because there's a new story, 2 pages only, summarizing Engelhardt's views, and dozens of people who built on this, especially the Europeans, in the last couple of decades. He talked about 2 kinds of values to simplify, and he had one was called materialist, and the same was post-materialist. And post-materialist, so materialist he measured initially with 4 items, then he had 16 items, and then others have done more with what's called the WVS, the World Values Survey, which has now been administered in over 100 countries in a couple of decades. So we have changes in values in the Chinese, among the Egyptians, among the Italians, over time, and they're big changes, which are quite dramatic to see. And when you have that, you don't have just the problems of spuriousness, but you can which came first and which came second. And at least it's unlikely to say that the second thing caused the first if it changed over time. Okay, so these are valuable. The simple change is that Engelhardt himself followed a social psychological perspective, which has been identified with a psychologist named Maslow. And the idea of Maslow is that people have physical needs for food, for shelter, for keeping your body going. But as you get satisfied with those simple physical needs, I shouldn't say simple, material is complicated too. But as these needs become met, then he suggests post-material concerns. And especially these are things which are the concerns of people roughly your age in college. People tend to focus and sharpen their values, which they maintain generally 60%, 70% for the rest of their lives. And so look at these, look at your friends, but basically what he then added was not just do we have enough to eat, but we also have beauty and egalitarianism, things like this, that is more abstract values which are concerned with helping people in general, improving the environment, being concerned with smoke and the like. So some of these maybe have physical implications, but many countries in the world, including China, in some areas, that is a particularly dramatic change illustrating this in terms of China and the U.S., if you will, is before Trump, the Americans were moving slowly toward environmentalism, but they were way behind the Europeans. The Scandinavians, the Swiss were much more concerned with the environment. The Chinese were behind the Americans. Then Donald Trump came along, and Trump basically embraced oil production and played way down the environmental issues, and the Chinese did the opposite. The Chinese at that point, because I won't try to say where and why, because these were major domestic issues inside China. The Chinese were concerned with, they've gotten more and more successful. China was a less developed country in 1945. It has become roughly equal to the U.S. That is, it's the biggest economy in the world, highly successful. With that, and so this model city, people are beginning to think in terms that are not just material, but they're trying to think and talk in terms of making the environment better, not just in a small town far away, but in the big cities like Shanghai and Beijing. Okay, this has become a major Chinese policy which illustrates exactly the Engelhardt kinds of policies. And then there are more which are now coming along, and I won't try to go into too much detail except to say the old Marxism is not at all clear as a guide, and in ways that it would have been in the past. But where and how and why is very delicate and very sensitive, as these things are still I'll just leave it as politically sensitive as we can see here. I'm using some examples about Marxism in ways that are outside China, but which include China, include the U.S. So we're often using France because for reasons that I mentioned with Castells. Logan and Molotch we can use just as Americans over time. These two guys are, American. Molotch, I still remember when he was a PhD grad student right here in Chicago. John Logan, the first co-author, has a paper on our reading list called The Character and Consequences of Growth Regimes, an Assessment of 20 Years of Research, Urban Affairs Review, 1997. What he does with his co-authors is review Molotch wrote a paper called The Growth Machine. And the idea was that economic growth is the main urban policy, and this is not just economics. This is politics. This is a sociology, and this should be, and this is a concern, and this is where we've read readings about this because of the I mentioned, for instance, the Barbara Furman breaking away from this, and Shoemaker's study of Lawrence, Kansas, studying many issues, and many citizens support economic development, just as do many citizens. Okay, but where and how can you do economic development? These two smart co-authors, one published a book, and in simple terms, they've said we were wrong. But they say it in a couple of different ways. Okay. Logan does it by doing a review of the literature. He did a second paper where he analyzed statistical data for cities across the U.S., and he analyzed the degree to which business, the importance of business and the salience of business was involved with business policies within America, across American cities. And that's also the same kind of thing that is in the paper with Ed Getz, and in several other papers which I've done the same basic thing and found the same results. That business is not dominant the way people used to say it was, such as Hunter. Okay. Harvey Molotch did not do quantitative analysis. He's a case study qualitative ethnographic researcher. And he spent a good chunk of his career at University of California. So I'm going to get the right. We've got a good California right here, or more, at least one, just north of Los Angeles, and next to. We want to get the right names of these cities. There are two cities. I think is it Santa Cruz? Santa Cruz is just north of the city, which is blocking on the names. They both have oil, and that's why I'm pointing to them, because Russia right now is a hot issue. Russia, Saudi Arabia, oil is a hot topic right oil and oil policies at the local level in these two cities were the opposite in about 1900, 100 years ago. And so in Santa Cruz basically said oil is dirty. And then multiple times it spilled out into the ocean. It destroyed the beach. It really got people very upset, and so there were lots of social movements to favor environmental control, to protect the beaches and the coast of the beautiful California state. Okay, in these particular cities. The same city, almost the same, the next city with the same environment could have done the same thing, but we had very distinct policies. The city just below it, maybe you could look up on a map for me, but we'll get the names.
Is it San Jose, or are you looking south of Santa Cruz?
I think it's the, well,
What's the name?
that's what I'm asking you for. Just
Monterey?
south, I think it's just south of Santa Cruz.
Monterey?
No,
I don't know.
that they were in the wrong area. It's jump for the,
Salinas? Salinas?
well, okay,
Or
maybe,
Watsonville?
no, okay.
Sorry, what are you describing? What's the city?
Yeah, well, I'm contrasting two cities, the same way I talked last time about Pittsburgh versus Chicago, because they have many things that are similar, but some things that are drastically different. And how the policies for oil were very, very different. And so you can play it down and not be pumping with oil pumps right on the beach and having it able to spill easily. Instead, several of the University of California campuses have stressed beauty, from the San Diego area up to the LA area to the north of and up to San Francisco. So in a couple of these, they're names of these campuses, and even though I taught at UCLA and went to a number of conferences, it's been long enough that I don't want to make a mistake. Okay, so what I'm referring to is the paper by Harvey Molotch, who said things which could have been said as well by Castells. That is, namely, they have said environmental policy is an important issue, but that's not the issue of saying what personal morale, personal views were. The important point is this is not directly Leninist Marxism. Rather, this is a new kind of aesthetic beauty, post-materialist social issue, not a traditional economic issue. And so it can become an economic issue in the sense that insofar as the market can express a concern for aesthetics or beauty, then prices will go up for restaurants, or especially Tokyo and Paris, for instance. Cost of living restaurants are much, much higher than Chicago and in New York. That is, it's much more expensive because the beauty and the aesthetics of those cities are so attractive that people do want to live there more than a city which has its old reputation being a dirty Midwest industrial city. And so what's exciting is seeing this city of Chicago is moving away from this old-fashioned materialist, industrial, dirty city to being similarly concerned with aesthetics, beauty, entertainment, using its lakefront in ways that are similar to the Seine in Paris or the California beaches. And so this is not to say that these are identical everywhere for sure, but that at least these have become very important, including enough so that in even the nation of China, in contrast to Trump, I mean, Donald Trump in that sense went backwards in terms of the general movement of the citizens. I mean, all the citizen surveys in Europe and the US show that more and more citizens are concerned with keeping the environment clean, pure, clean air, not having dirty air, et cetera, et cetera. Trump did the opposite. And so I'm not trying to say, I'm not saying I'm in favor or against any one person or leader. I'm still talking about the issue and comparing the issue to citizens. And there are many Republicans who've said the same thing. Okay. So the Molotch then published a paper in the American Sociological Review, and he was attacked by Marxist sociologists who were saying, how can you say this about, you know, being concerned with making a city and a beach, having attractive aesthetics? This is not, and the term was then used about that time, this is not really a political economy concern. They dropped the term Marxism, but they talked, a political economy concern was a hot, politically correct label for a while. Okay, and Molotch in turn, to my surprise, was very aggressive in saying, you know, you're just being dogmatic Marxists, and I'm not a dogmatic Marxist. So in that sense, these are interpenetrating issues, which is why I'm pointing this out, and showing you that 20 years ago when we published this book, The New Political Culture, social issue, we talked about social issues. Social issues today are called diversity, gender, race, women, including the environment, including human rights internationally, and the treatment of immigrants coming from abroad to the earth. These are social issues which are not how to make the land value greater in a narrow materialist interpretive sense. Okay, so what I'm doing then is embellishing the section. This is section 6, called Economic Development Impacts. And so these readings, I'm mentioning a couple other California examples here briefly. Edward Getz, Type 2 Policy and Mandated Benefits in Economic Development, Urban Affairs Quarterly. Okay, Ed Getz and I did it, and I got to know each other at a couple of, we had some summer schools. We had one in Chicago. We had two or three of them in Colorado, in Boulder, and we had urban people working on similar issues, maybe a dozen of them from all over the country, all over the world, and we met and worked with each other, and so Getz and I did a paper together. He at that point was working for the city of San Francisco. The mayor was Dianne Feinstein. He was responsible for the environment and how to try to make urban policies in the city of San Francisco be more responsive to making, and one of the biggest ones which they talked about was, guess what? How could they make the city of San Francisco more attractive? And it was highly controversial, and it applied only to 2 buildings a year, which was what? How was that urban policy under Mayor Feinstein? What could 2 buildings, okay, they limited the number of new buildings, high buildings, to 2 a year. Why? Because, yeah.
To preserve the aesthetic of the city?
Yes, but what about the aesthetic that, I mean, if we're talking about downtown Paris, for sure, I mean, that would be, that's a good, I mean, that's a very explicit answer, which is correct for Paris. That is, the Parisians will say, we will have no skyscrapers, and this is very explicit in the zoning. The Paris is very strictly zoned as a city. Chicago is medium loose. San Francisco was trying to become a little more strict. And it was the most strict of any. Then there were surveys done of all the California cities. What were these specific environmental policies? San Francisco had the most, and what they did not want to have two buildings, skyscrapers for, was the shadow would be not aesthetic. We wanted to have the sun be able to be on the lower buildings and people walking in the street. Okay, that shows an aesthetic concern, not a normal materialist concern. I want more sun, or happy to be able to have more sun and not just have a high building. Okay. So Ed gets in them, and I analyze the types of aesthetic policies and environmental policies which were coming out with, and at the time I'll make the simple point, because I was actively working with the U.S. Conference of Mayors as senior policy advisor in Washington. We have meetings all the time with groups of mayors, and the traditional policies were the New Deal, Democratic Party New Deal. Then a group of them, including Dianne Feinstein in San Francisco, Ed Koch in New York, Kathy Whitmire in Houston, all became elected, and they were fiscally cautious. That is, they did not want to raise taxes. They wanted to be fiscally somewhat cautious, but they were especially in favor of social issues, including the environment, including shadows, including a series of things, and so which Jane Jacobs had written about, and in Greenwich Village was a major city neighborhood, which was articulating those concerns, which were national and international as well. Okay, so the part of this. These debates, and let me just I'll describe one or two more readings before I generalize. The next reading is Sharon Zukin, Philip Kasnitz, Xingmin Chen, a book called Global Cities, Local Streets, Everyday Diversity from New York to Shanghai, 2016. Okay, this book was presented at a session. It just came out at a session where I was present with Dan Silver and with some of our team working on scenescapes. And so we had some findings, and so we had about 4 or 5 people presenting those, and several of these people, including from China, so Sharon Zukin on her website, her website, or what's it called in let's just say her website says, "I'm a Marxist," period. The book, and I'm linking this to the earlier readings, were basically, what made her reputation was she published a book called Loft Living, and she studied lofts in New York City as being purchased by and lived in and used by artists near Wall Street. And so lofts could be cheap because they were run-down old buildings, industrial cities. And so if you can convert this into a cheap building, into a loft, you can paint there and live there as well. And so she wrote a book about this. And this, in a sense, you could say it's a dramatic case study of what Engelhard called post-materialist living. But she was a Marxist. Okay, so she could write about these things. So I did a paper with Lipset, and had a very smart research assistant, PhD student here at Chicago, and who was also a Marxist. And so we said, let's look through. So the empirical points. I'm starting from Loft Living. I would say, what was and is an innovation. But then in this book, they went internationally. And they went to Amsterdam, New York, and Shanghai. And basically, they then have, and here I'm critiquing their methodology, and the very narrow, simple, boring topic you probably never paid much attention to, called sampling. Okay, and I'll just mention in passing to Professor Chen. Or have you read anything in, because you're now taking your first, so you're a professor. I mean, she's not just 50, 2021. You're taking your first course on statistics with just. Have you read anything on sampling in the course yet, or not at all?
Some of
What did they? Anything that links to what you've read, or which links with anything you've read about in China?
no.
Okay, so the no is important. Most of my smart, I mean, there are many very smart, very subtly sophisticated people in China, but they don't seem to learn anything about sampling, in the sense that they go out, and she does, and so I'm saying this is not just one person, Sharon Zukin. I'm saying this for Professor Chen, and I'm saying for if we have some people who see this video in China, I hope you will learn more sampling. Okay, so I'll illustrate this with what Sharon Zukin has done. What they basically said: if we go to some streets in New York and some streets in they didn't use so much the term I'm using here. Some say a reasonable street, whatever a street, we can find Starbucks, Gap, Nike, or other brands that may be especially French. There are many French elite brands will have, that is, I mean, one of the quintessential corporations of that sort was called Tiffany's. Who now owns Tiffany?
LVMH.
Okay, what's that for the others? Just they're
It's
known by the
Vuitton.
bags.
Yeah, it's Louis Vuitton. I
Okay.
think the acronym is like Louis Vuitton, what, and Hennessy.
It's just T-U-I. So two T's at the
Yeah.
Okay, so Vuitton. I believe he's the most.
Oh, no, the name is Arnaud.
Yeah. So Arnaud's the owner.
Yeah.
So we know. So Arnaud is.
But he has like a monopoly on everything.
He's in competition for the richest man in the world, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
He has Tiffany's, he has Louis Vuitton, he has Dior.
Okay. There's a sociologist who worked with Pierre Bourdieu, who I've known for a number of years, and they published a new book on Vuitton and how the French luxury market was working, and how they were developing these. They were initially, I mean, they're now with the travel is open. Many Chinese women are now going to Paris, and they come back with handbags. Okay, so the thousands of them. Okay, and Filipinos, many others. That is, the brand name is enormous. So I invited your predecessors at the French consulate in Chicago, and I said, can we invite the author of this book to come to Chicago or come to America, because it's a new, interesting book, and they really show, that is, it's how do you do economic development with luxury goods. Okay, can anybody majoring in economics here? Nobody. Okay. What's the definition of a luxury good in simple economic terms? Basically, a luxury good is if you have people who have more and more income, what proportion of their money is spent on luxuries? And the definition of a luxury, simple definition, is as people get high in income, they'll spend more money on luxury goods. Whereas if you're lower in income, you won't spend as much. I mean, so in that sense, not fancy handbags or attractive wines and champagnes or bracelets, diamonds, jewelry, these are classic luxury goods. But so in this sense, these are material in Engelhardt's terms. But what I'm getting to here is these brand names not only are exclusively brand names, but they're also generally, let's say, brands that are recognized if you travel as an international traveler to Paris or Berlin or Shanghai or Tokyo. And the point of their book is to say it's the same and it's boring. And it's sad, and we're losing local autonomy and local cultural distinctiveness and so these global cities, local streets is the title, but their title is There Is Not Localism. Okay, and so I was very interested in this because we in the Scenescapes book, we know, and that is where does the line come from? That is, who suggests that it's the same everywhere? Who else has said this in the past? Karl Marx himself. Who then elaborated it? It was briefly in Marx, but it was really elaborated by Lenin. So Lenin stressed that global capitalism makes the world more ready for revolution, and when we have a large enough, that is when we're in a period of socialism fighting against capitalism, the socialist states must fight against the capitalist states until we have enough states that are socialist. Then we can have a revolution, and then we can be in communism. Okay, so that's the Leninist clear policy. So that's the theory that Zukin is using. That is, it's not uniquely them. There's some that is, and I'm bringing this closer because even Sasson there's a chapter in Sasson's book on consumption, and her theory of consumption is taken from these same ideas. Wall Street brings bland, homogeneous, maybe luxury, but it ain't distinctive. It ain't local. It's not specifically French or Chinese or Beijing specific. And so okay, let me then jump to the next meeting. I'll have a little discussion here, but I just mention it. Then we will have covered all the readings in week 8, and then we're going to have week 9 is Thanksgiving break. Okay, so I'll mention it even here. I posted a new syllabus, version 5. I just put it up an hour or so ago. And I've changed these dates because the names of the weeks, because it was in earlier years this was week 9, so week 9 is now breaks. So 9, we'll talk about the arts a little bit more in the 10th week on Monday, but we've now covered these readings through week 8. And I'll just mention Gordon Douglas, who was a TA in this course before he did this paper in a book. Is what he calls do-it-yourself urban design. This is the opposite of Sharon Zukin, Kasnitz, and others. That is, instead of saying Vuitton is the only way you do it, he says if you live in one little block and you can be in Berkeley, or you can be in a village in China, or you can be in a poor Texas or Mexican city. If you have water which is flooding because there's a blockage in the sewage lines, or there may be no sewage lines. I'm laughing because I worked as a translator in French West Africa, and we would walk through the whole downtown. We went through this much sewage every single day for 4 months. So I vomited and had diarrhea every day for the whole time. But it was the most fascinating political experience. But go ahead.
I have curiosity, where in France, I mean, I've never been, but what country would that be now that you were in?
Conakry, Guinea. Same name, same country. But it's part of French West Africa.
Right.
And it was the most Marxist, militant of all the countries in France. And so today it's a little more in Mali, but these countries of Mali, Guinea, have really kicked out the French in the last year. And so now they're going to the Russians. So we got international stuff is continuing on. That when I was involved with them at that point, that is that they were okay. I won't try to well. I guess the power of Marxism in international context and in affecting specific policies. I mean, the French policy, bigger French policy was General de Gaulle had when he wanted to create the Fifth Republic. So he wrote a new constitution. Instead of having just a prime minister who got killed or who didn't have a majority, he hadn't had a majority in 1945, 46. It was a real problem. So he wanted to have a strong president. So he wrote a new constitution. And people said, why don't you become prime minister? No, I don't want to just be prime minister. I want to be president of France, and I'll write a new constitution. So they had a referendum in all of the colonies of France, or former colonies called the French Community, and one of them, and they all said yes, except Guinea. And so I went to Guinea because they hated the French, and so the French were really attacking them. They took all the stamps out of the post offices. You couldn't buy any stamps. You send any postcards. There was no toilet paper, and you were very lucky if they ever had a newspaper, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was dramatic, and lots of violence. I think, but Bogota was scary. This was a lot more. Okay, but that's what I did when I was a young kid. All right. So is your hand up?
No.
No. Okay. Basically, I'm trying to say a little. We're almost out, but let's have a little discussion. Anything which is.
Well, I mean, the luxury goods market, I think especially after COVID, has really risen a lot. And I don't think, sure it still uses the term luxury items, but...
Say that sentence again.
Sure, we still use the word
we still use it.
We, yeah,
Go ahead.
we still use the term luxury items, but within all the brands that LVMH owns, there are different level of luxury. Level's not the right word, but after COVID, spending on those types of items has gone up a lot, and they've made their insane profits like they've never done before. And so that has seen the emergence of a new type of luxury good.
Which is?
The less in your face, quote unquote. Like they're still luxury items, but if you don't know what they are, then you can't know. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Well, but I'm not in no way disagreeing, but I'm simply saying that what you can see in your comments and in this discussion is luxury goods have become more and more important. That is, in China, clean air is a luxury good, and it's a major issue. And that is what this ideal city in China. I mean, just one example which you didn't hear, but one thing which was in the videos which I saw in China was they have a automatic way that you could leave your car and then go, you know, go and take your children, go shopping. And the building is set up to automatically park the cars and then bring them back down when you're ready to have the cars back, with no people in the car. So there are no valets. It's all automated. So your digitalization, I'm showing even more powerful, an illustration of what you described as having a credit card, of having, okay. So the Chinese are doing this, and so I'm agreeing with you, but who, I mean, you want to mention just, some of these people may know, but some of the Americans who have been hired to try to articulate some of these tastes as models or advisors or subcontractors for shoes or other things. Anybody familiar with that? Anybody from? And I mean, this is in the. Okay. Rappers. Okay, the #1 rapper in the world was hired by Arnaud, or that is, he didn't, his son, I think it was his son or grandson, whatever.
Yeah, each of the like 4 big companies they own is each run by an offspring.
Yeah, so his children are involved in different corporations, and they're doing very creative. They're trying to be creative things, but not offend things. And so when you're hiring, you know, young male African American rappers, you can get some. So I mean, just I won't spread too much criticism on my neighbors from Bronzeville, but there's a lot of stuff which you can find in the press of scandals and so forth, the Nazis, etc. If you want to look this up. Okay, we are at the end. We will have. Am I at the right? That is, next week is break, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, have a Thanksgiving break. How many are you going home away from here? Okay. Where's each of your homes, just for instance?
San Diego.
Yeah. Okay. San Diego.
San Diego.
Okay. That's what I thought. Our 2 lovely ladies. Beautiful San Diego. Yes. Now, I subscribed to the magazine called San Diego for several years after doing field work there, but still keep reading that stuff. Okay. Where are you going?
Back to Montreal.
Montreal. Okay, that's great. And you're going to San Diego?
Yes.
Okay. I did as well on the exam you gave me as you did too. That is, cheers to that is, many of you folks who are not here in person are doing hard work, thoughtfully, creatively writing excellent exams, and it's wonderful to see. So cheers to all. And have a great break, and let's continue after Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.